people, CzarThwomp here, and welcome to episode 10 of the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve. Last time, we discovered that Natsume is being arrested for another murder, pretty much right immediately after he got acquitted of his first accusation, and we're checking out the crime scene area, where basically Gregson is just done with life. No, don't mind me! Fucking I was here! Natsume, away! And then Natsume just jumps to the window, he just breaks through the bricks and just starts running down the street screaming. And my second conclusion is that there was a poison lingering in the air here last night that passed the victim's lips. Nonsense! Ah! Alright, Mr. Natsume, why are you reacting so extremely to Mr. Sholmes' deductions? Not going to land me in prison again! What do you think? I am not going back there! There were some street toughs there who were giving me seductive looks, and I am not having any of that! No, please pretend I'm not here! Invisible, ineffable, inscrutable, insignificant! Impossible to ignore.
You must tell us everything, Mr. Sholmes. Spare no detail.
But of course, let the theatrical tragedy must be unraveled by my great deductions, presented for your pleasure in 2 acts. We've heard some truly astounding great deductions from Mr. Sholmes in the past. No doubt this will be no exception. What miracles will unfold before our eyes this time? So, my dear fellows, for your delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. For Sherlock, Sholmes, Logic and Reasoning Spectacular, Act 1. Okay, I guessed it right. Yippee! Didn't take me for a loop this time. Cause of death. I deduced that it was a black mamba that killed him. It snuck into the apartment, led by the Boreas crew, and it killed him. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in the disconsolate room last night. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates the use of poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate, which contains, you will observe, 1/2 of the size of a bar of soap. Meaningful. Indubitably, he got the soap poisoning. He said the F word instead of fudge. His mother made him put the soap in his mouth, and he got the soap poisoning. Why is the soap set so purposefully upon the dish, like the victim's last supper, in fact? Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course, the fork reveals the answer. It appears that the young man's appetite was his undoing. Taking up arms in the form of his cutlery, the victim engaged in the deadly battle for his life. Yet the struggle against his hunger was in vain, for in the end, he couldn't resist devouring the slippery feast. But London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the contents of his plate. The soap and the lather around the young man's mouth are too perfectly matched to ignore. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to excessive ingestion of foul soap. Though personally, I have a greater interest in the take of foul candle wax, of course. Knowing Sherlock, I wouldn't be surprised if he did partake in a meal of foul candle wax. This is why Iris can't have candles in the flat.
Holmesy ruined it. Holmesy was eating a bar of cucumber summer.
Suicide or murder? The cause of death identified. We proceed to Act 2. Why are we on to the next question? Was this suicide or murder? I mean, look at this place. Who wouldn't want to kill themselves in a place like this? The audience will recall the death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man dine and die alone? This single teacup suggests the answer. To draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. The careful criminal could have absconded with his own cup to cover his tracks. Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. Though forced open now, at the time of the incident, this door was locked. And the sole key was in the victim's pocket. In other words, when the victim consumed the poison, he must have been alone. Alone with his inferior soap, from whence wafted an inferior scent. Not like my badass soap. I make it in my own bathroom, in the bathtub. Iris and I haven't been able to bathe for the past 3 months, but the soap we've been making and selling on the side has been spectacular. Shom soap. And with that acrid aroma lingering in the air, the victim met his end in tragic solitude. We can take comfort only in the fact that the soul was well cleansed on its way to the hereafter. No possible perpetrator present. Thus concludes the final act of Sherlock Holmes' great deduction.
Every day, my faith in humanity dies ever slightly more.
You know, Gracie, he's just giving off this look like, don't look at me! Don't look at me! This crazy maniac, he's the one paying my bills! There's just one thing, Mr. Sholmes. You are disposed of identifying just one thing, aren't you, Mr. Naruto? Pray, what concerns you? And I forgot to turn the timer on. Well, no matter how hungry he was, do you really think the man would have eaten soap? It's quite apparent that this man had barely a penny to his name. It is a curious thing, but to one so destitute, soap can suddenly appear quite irresistibly appetizing. I mean, have you ever smelled my soap, Mr. Naruto? Have you ever smelled its delicate scent that has been blended with our bathwater?
How extraordinary!
In truth, I have tried a little soap myself in the past. I swear, Iris has to childproof everything in their flat, probably. Iris probably just has to lock every door, every cabinet, everything. Just nothing can be left out for Sherlock. You've eaten it, you mean? My dear fellow, it was some time ago now. And then Iris...
Holmesy, it was last week!
My postulation was that it would cleanse my guts.
And did it?
As I writhed and acting on the floor and split the contents of my stomach, yes, I believe it did. The experience taught me a valuable lesson. Soap is quite poisonous. It has an unpleasant taste and leads to great discomfort. In summary, I cannot recommend it. Believe me, I wouldn't eat it even if you did.
There's something that troubles me as well, actually.
Oh, what's that?
It's Mr. Natsume.
Ah! Well, he doesn't want to go to jail again, Susato. Last time he saw Sherlock making deductions, he ended up in jail and being prosecuted by Barack Van Zeeks. And knowing Van Zeeks, well, he came in with the clamps and just his entire phrenology kit.
I couldn't help noticing him shuddering and quivering about out of the corner of my eye. Almost as if Mr. Shone's deductions touched a nerve somehow.
Nonsense! Well, that clenched teeth episode didn't last.
I think, judging by Mr. Natsume's reaction, the great detective's deductions may need some gentle corrections in order to reach the actual truth.
Yes, Mr. Sholmes' observations and deductions are sometimes a little too sharp. He has a tendency to hit the nail on the side of the head and drive it at an obtuse angle. When he does that, it falls to us to straighten things out. Alright then, let's see what we can do.
Yes, we must pick out the key words in Mr. Sholmes' quite brilliant deductions and discreetly exchange them for something that makes a little more sense. If we can do that, I'm sure we'll arrive at what Mr. Sholmes meant to say in the first place.
In that case, are you ready for a second performance of the day? Once again, my dear fellows, for your continued delight and wonder, let the curtain rise for Sherlock Holmes' Logic and Reasoning Spectacular Act 1. Course correction. Hold it, Mr. Sholmes. Poisoning from soap ingestion. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in this disconsolate room last night. Foam at the mouth of the deceased, clearly indicate the use of poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate, which contains, as you will observe, 1/2 of a sizable bar of soap. Meaningful, indubitably. Why is the soap so purposely upon the dish? Like the victim's last supper, in fact. Yes. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course, the fork reveals the answer. Well, you can't deny a fork implies the man was eating something, or about to eat something.
Yes, that's true. If I were to eat some soap, I would prefer to use a fork that attempted with chopsticks. Meanwhile, Sherlock, he was probably just biting into it like an ice cream sandwich. And of course, only half of the bar of soap is left on the plate. But might there not be some other explanation? Something material that proves whether or not the man really ate some soap?
The other piece of the soap.
Take that!
Yes, there we go. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course. The other piece of soap reveals the answer. It being the other half of the soap on the table. In short, the victim was not eating the soap at all. But it's obvious, really, for no depth of hunger could drive any man to attempt to eat soap. Even I, with my unquenchable thirst for practical knowledge, took only a single bite. But that begs the question of how the man was poisoned, because there's no sign of any food on the table. An excellent observation, Mr. Naruto, and one that furnishes us with the answers we seek. For London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the contents of this plate. Mr. Sholmes is still pushing the soap argument then.
Perhaps he's suggesting the man licked the soap rather than ate it, like a lollipop.
If soap in London was that poisonous, I don't think I'd want to be washing my hands with it. But there are no signs of any food in this room at all.
Of course, food isn't the only thing that passes people's lips, is it?
The fork, the teacup. The victim himself.
Take that!
The teacup of doom. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the teacup. Indeed, cups have been the vessel of choice for practicing poisoners over the centuries. And it would appear that this victim drank every last drop. There's no sign of food anywhere in the room. Which leads us to the immutable conclusion. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to the ingestion of poison contained in the teacup. Poisoning in the tea. The tea has been spilt. The cause of death identified, we proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this suicide or murder? The audience will recall that death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man dine and die alone? This single teacup suggests the answer. Ah, the Western vessel for infused hot drinks again. It's already featured heavily in our deduction so far.
Yes, we can imagine that shortly before his death, Mr. Shamspeare was having a drink of tea. There would be nothing remarkable about that. But what troubles me is Mr. Natsume's reaction when he heard that Mr. Sholmes suggested it. There's more to this deduction than it seems. We must examine the scene of the crime again for some more clues.
The other teacup.
Take that!
More teacups. Did the man die and die alone? This other teacup suggests the answer. Yes, there were 2 teacups in this room all along. Ah! In other words, this is a strong indication that the victim's last supper, there was a guest present. At the very least, we can say now with certainty that somebody else was here in this room last night taking tea with the victim. What are you talking about? Utterly unbelievable, justly unreasonable. To draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however. In which case, what more can we deduce about this possible guest at the table? Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow.
Do you mean to say you know exactly who was in the room at the time of the victim's death?
Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock.
I'm not sure I like where this deduction is going now. I'm afraid it's too late to go back to the Alicon days of eating too much soap. But the identity of the guest who was here last night when the victim passed away is something I have a very bad feeling about. Well, you can try to ignore your feelings, but we cannot ignore the truth, Mr. Naruto. No, I suppose not. Time to look around again. The empty bottle. Yes, the Phoenix's namesake. Pile of books. Candle. Okay, pile of books.
Take that!
You will observe that there's a pile of books here. Yet clearly, no one man could read 3 whole books. In other words, there must have been someone else in this.
I must warn you, Mr. Naruto, that a sprinkling of phrases as such as yet clearly and in other words will not fool anyone.
But I've always heard you using such turns of phrases like that.
The more fool to you!
If you will attempt to emulate the ways of
a great detective, you must first identify the greatness.
Okay, was there somebody else in here last night or not? Clearly that's a fundamental question that will reveal the truth about this man's passing. Exactly, so we must make sure we have a solid grounds for our conclusion. I must have another look around and make sure there's not more than meets the eye. At first glance, it seems that the only things in this room are the makeshift stage and the costumes. I overlooked these 3 books initially.
I wonder what they are. Let's see. The titles read The Picture of Monsieur Lecroc, Canterbury Yearnings, and A Meal for Gabbro.
That's what I was trying to get, that these are Natsume's books. Wait, I'm sure I've heard those titles before.
It could be just an incredible coincidence, but they're the exact same 3 books that Mr. Natsume purchased the other day.
What? Yes, on the day of the unfortunate incident where Miss Green was stabbed, Soseki-san had just been to a bookshop and bought them. That's right.
And now those 3 titles are here in this room of the victim.
Yet Mr. Natsume claims to never have been here before. What? What does this mean? Do you think...
I really don't know what to make of it.
Take that!
Pile of familiar books. Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the pile of familiar books.
Quite so. It's no mere coincidence that these 3 titles are in this room. It's the link to the truth.
Ah! Mr. Natsume, you purchased these books 4 days ago at a secondhand bookshop. That's just a coincidence.
In that case, you would be able to bring the same 3 titles for your own room, will you not? This very moment.
No, never, non-negotiable! If you can bring your own copies here, it proves that these 3 books are in fact yours. Having purchased the books 4 days ago and returned to your lodgings, you were arrested the very next day. So you could conceivably have brought the books here on that evening, but you never mentioned that.
In other words, you could only have brought these 3 books here to the victim's room.
Yeah, I just love how they're just doing this. I love how they're having Natsume just dance all the way to the room.
Last night, having returned to your lodgings after the trial concluded at the Old Bailey. In short, there's only one possible conclusion. You're going back to jail. Goodbye. The victim died in his room last night as a result of poisoning. You tried to feed him soap and make him drink soap from the tea.
And that same night, the victim had a visitor.
And that visitor
was you, Mr. Soseki Natsume. For a second, I thought he was going
gonna follow her to his side. Like he was just gonna step it up and just go down. That's gonna lose the final act of Sherlock Holmes' great deduction. Soseki Natsume at the scene. Deduction complete. And then basically, meanwhile, Gregson, he's just standing off to the side. Big Bruv Sulky is just standing off to the side. Not again, not again, not again! Yes again, Soul John, you're going back to your cell. Hope you lock your cell, because you're going back there. No! Not again! Well then, Mr. Natsume, it would appear you're going to have to accompany me down to the yard. Again! But wait! Hold your horses! Yes? Door! Key! Locked! Entry! Exit! Entirely impossible! He's so flustered, he's being even stranger than normal. What? You think there's an animal? You could have just made a copy! What? You live in the same building, after all. You'd have the plenty of opportunity, I'm sure. But then why would you have to break the door down? Oh wait. In that case, you could just say, oh, he was lying. Misery! Sorry, sir. You'll get your chance to give your side of the story later. In court. Yeah, when Earl Scooter Von Zeeks comes by with his front door ticket, hope you lock the clamps. Not the clamps again! Not the calipers! The facts speaks for themselves, Mr. Moustache. Ah, you horrible Sherlock Holmes! He really has found himself in our tribal now, hasn't he? I swear, Soseki just had. I swear, I wouldn't be surprised if basically just Soseki gets his hatred for Sherlock is so great that he ends up just haunting Kristoff and Clavier. Just basically Kristoff. Right? Why is Maya staring at Maya? Why are you staring at me like?
Kristoff, it's just some guy is looking, he's glaring at you, he's clenching his teeth and cursing at you.
Come on down, no dilly-dallying, hands on, there's a carriage waiting. Look, I'm student nursery, Esquire. I never imagined I'd be in this position again, but you have to help me, please. I'm innocent. All right, I understand. We'll come by your cell later and talk about it. And one more thing. Oh yes. My poor little kitty cat. Please give him his breakfast for me. And then basically outside, you hear the screeching of a cat. Just, oops, sorry, Random, you got with the carriage. And so, his evil curse still apparently unbroken. Soseki-san found himself once again the prime suspect in a case of murder. And then Van Zeke's rolling up his sleeves. Here we go again. I swear, where are my calipers? Thanks to the incriminating deduction of the great detective. My dear fellow, that honor belongs to you. In that case, the first time, Iris was probably the mastermind behind the arrest. Well, at least that means Inspector Gregson is no longer here. We can examine the crime scene in more detail now.
Yes, that's right. And of course.
What?
Have you forgotten what the inspector mentioned before? It was the landlord, Mr. Garadeb, who discovered Mr. Shamspeare.
Ah, Mr. John Garadib, yes.
I expect we could find him in his sitting room on the top floor as usual.
Right, we must remember to go and talk to him later then. Yes! Yeah, basically, get his ire. Let's look at the basically, it looks like the Hatter from the first game had another customer. Yes.
There's not much on these shelves, is there? Just a wine glass and bottle. And both of them are cracked.
Yes, not much use, are they? What's the matter?
Oh, I was just reminded of the Reaper, that's all.
Prosecutor Lord Van Zeeks? Yes, Van Zeeks comes to this area to investigate the crimes, and he sees the cracked glass and the cracked bottle. What monster could have done this? You don't shatter wine bottle glasses and bottles like this. You throw them and you cause them to burst into shards. You make it theatric. You don't leave them to rot. And then basically Van Zieks then goes on to basically to deduce that Natsume, he just cracked them himself, just basically out of spite.
Yes, he's so reckless with his wine glasses. I was thinking it's a waste that he should donate some to the needy.
You can suggest it next time we meet. Yeah, Van Zieks doesn't help the poor. Screw the poor, I have money. 1% represent. And Van Zieks then just tosses a bag of coins at just poor people when he passes by them. Just some guys begging for change. Oh, you want change? Here's some change. Van Zieks pulls out a big bag full of coins, and then just whaps him right inside the head. There's your change. And here's a tip. Don't bother me again. Look at these extravagant, bright costumes. Somehow they look out of place in this room, with its grim, shady going-ons.
This one looks like a king's attire.
A king? I've always dreamt of being a king. And then about a century later, basically, Maya makes Phoenix dress up as the Burger King for Halloween.
Oh, I think you'd be more suited to a feudal lord, a daimyo or such like.
With a fromage top knot, every Japanese man wishes he has a fromage. What the heck's a fromage? I'm looking it up. I'm looking at what a fromage is. Or cone mage. Okay, I'm looking it up now. Oh, so basically, I just looked it up. Apparently, the cone mage is essentially the hairdo that Ouchie had before Kazuma basically sliced his hair and basically just left him in the state that we know him as. Okay, I learned something new. And then basically, Ouchie.
So you took mine away? You were envious, so you destroyed my beauty? Oh, you'd look wonderful with one, and you'd already have the sword.
Can you imagine what would happen if I walked around the streets of London with a cone mage and a sword? Okay.
What's this?
It looks like part of an envelope, I think.
Yes, I think you may be right. Perhaps it was torn off when the letter was opened.
Is that significant?
Well, it's a little out of place, perhaps. When you look around the room, there's no sign of a letter, or the rest of the envelope is there.
Ah, she's right.
And yet we have the torn off end of an envelope. It just strikes me as unusual.
I agree, we better take this, just in case. The torn off end of the envelope has been added. Window. Okay. Apparently people are coming in to play Mario Kart. Right as I record.
As you've seen from the outside, the window's completely bricked up. A vestige of the former window tax the Britons had to pay.
What strange things they used to tax in Great Britain. I mean, making people pay for the number of windows they had in a property, it's extraordinary.
It's heartbreaking to think of the poor having to block up their windows just to avoid an unaffordable tax. Oh!
What is it, Miss Susato?
If you look closely, a number of bricks are loose.
Oh yes, it looks as though an amateur has broken out a few of them this year. Was it Mr. Shamspeare did it, I wonder? Being the lodger renting this room?
Ah, look at this, Mr. Naruto. On the outside, there's a little ledge, and there's something on it.
What? Outside? Ledge. Soap.
It's so cold outside. You can feel it through the scab.
It did snow all last night. It would be cold. But more importantly, what is it on the ledge out there? What are those snow-covered lumps?
It's more bars of soap.
Soap? What are bars of soap doing lined up on a ledge outside the window?
I have no idea, but the pair of them look rather charming like that.
Still, that's very strange, isn't it? Bars of soap lined up outside the window. I think perhaps we should take one. There are two after all.
Oh dear, I suppose we could. Oh, what's this? Look here at the soap.
Ah!
Do you see in the middle here? There's a patch of a different color. It's sort of transparent, but
Some sort of fancy design, I suppose, only in Great Britain.
It looks like the Hinomaru flag of Japan, doesn't it? How wonderful. It's probably a very expensive brand.
Expensive? Then what's it doing in this ramshackle room? Yes, the Japanese soap. Natsume attacked him with soap. Natsume came in with a bag full of soap and just started attacking the guy. Okay, let's continue our investigation. And here we have another disproportionately large machine. This looks like a meter of some kind.
Ah, this is a gas meter, I think. It seems that this district was resident-based for gas as they use it with coins.
Ah, I see. Yes, now you pointed out, I can see that there's a slot here that looks just like it would take a coin. So you mean if you put a coin in here?
That's right. That would buy you about 2 hours of gas for lights and heating.
So if you were a poor person with no money, you'd have to sleep in the freezing cold.
Yes, or if you were a scatterbrain with no change because you forgot to exchange your money at the bank.
Thank goodness there's no meter in our office. Okay, light. This is a gas wall light, isn't it? It must be connected to a gas pipe in the wall.
Gas lights, a gas stove. London really is a city of gas.
But now that I think about it, Mr. and Mrs. Garadev had an open fire on the top floor, didn't they?
Oh yes, you're right. I don't recall seeing a gas stove up there.
Well, I much prefer a real fire anyways. It's so much cozier. Okay, we checked that out. Candle.
This is some sort of makeshift stage, I think, isn't it?
Where does the audience sit, though, for the nightly Shakespeare performances?
Actors aspiring to the great stage must practice their art, Mr. Naruto, with or without an audience. In fact, on a related note, perhaps you should set up a mock bench for the defense in your office.
What?
Then you could practice your art every single day.
I'll think about it if you promise to don a beard and play the role of the judge.
Well, if that would help you achieve your goal.
This I have to see. Yes, and then basically, then they can air their own commercial for their agency, for basically their firm. Okay, we'll check out the body.
Oh, the poor man, so young to die. Do you suppose it was a very painful death, being poisoned as he was?
I don't know. All we can do now is hope that he'll be reborn to a better life.
Yes, I suppose you're right. I wonder. Do you think that putting our hands together in a Japanese prayer will help a British soul?
Sorry? Oh yeah, good thing for Rocky Van Zeke. Good thing Van Zeke's isn't here. Otherwise, he would be like, oh yes, because that's what he needs. You sending him to hell. Yeah, because basically the great beyond, they say, oh no, the Nipponese have to pray for him. Thus he must not be a good man. You're going to the pit, the foul pit. Sorry?
I made sure I had a reference at the ready for just such an occasion as this, actually. This book is entitled The Beginner's Guide to Praying for the Departed, the British Way. First, we must do 500 chants of Your Highness. I'll just reread it now. One moment.
There's quite a spine on that book, isn't there? Okay, anything else? The mug?
Ah, one of those teacups that Mr. Shamspeare and his guest drank from last night. But don't go drinking from them, Mr. Naruto. There's bitter poison inside.
I'm not planning on drinking any, don't worry. Anyways, the cups are both empty.
That's true. So, one was Mr. Shamspeare's, and the other must be the cup that Mr. Natsume was drinking from.
Well, Soseki-san wasn't poisoned, of course. Perhaps we should take these cups so we can examine them in more detail later. The pair of cups have been added. Okay, we've examined everything that we needed to here. I don't know who's talking. Ah, Gregson. Inspector Gregson, but back so soon? After I threw that little Japanese fella in the clink, I went and reported this to the investigation division. In 5 minutes' time, this place will be cordoned off by the yard. Oh, I see. Well, we'd better be leaving then.
Poor Mr. Natsume must be feeling very low being back in a cell again so soon.
I'm sure. We should probably go. And...
What's wrong, Mr. Naruto? Oh no! I brought him back to life! I've created a zombie!
without a brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player. That struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. Now, how suiteth the next part? It is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, satisfying nothing. Is Bobby gonna come in? Because basically, this is the exact bit from Macbeth, I believe, that basically Bobby quoted Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. Indeed, oh happy day! What? Walking Dead! Quickly! Hit it! Quickly! We have to shoot! Yeah, and then basically Ryunnosuke pulls out a crossbow, fires some bolts into basically the head. We have to chop off the head and then talk about it for 5 hours. The fat isn't dead at all!
What was that nonsense he was saying, though? We'll answer that next time. Anyways, I really appreciate that you stuck around to watch this episode. You're a great viewer, and hope you come back for the next one. If you'd like to be a like, subscribe, comment, share, do whatever they want. With that, see you next time. Bye.